I don't know. My heart just sank when you said that because I feel like I feel a lot of things. It's hard to generalize. And I've been working in
Yeah.
this medium for over a decade now. And a lot has happened. And when you're an activist, it's tempting to kind of spread yourself out and to log in about all sorts of things. That's been very hard. Trump was very easy. Trump was easy, and I was not silent. It was a traditional textile-based craftivist protest that was so exciting because it felt like there was something to channel directly. I switched after he was out of office to a different kind of language almost entirely that I considered also a protest, which is that I looked to other artists, writers. I looked to the people and to nature and to music and to poets. And I just I just had to re-nourish myself.
Hi, Diana. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, how are you?
Very well, very well. I have been researching about your work, and you've been talking about things that a lot of us want to talk, but afraid, too controversial, too political, uh, too many words to say. So I want to start, want to start this from there is because, a lot of times in world like today where we're talking about aesthetic story, um, everything, a very important part of being an artist is, being able to say and, stand up for something that we truly believe in. And I feel like you have a lot of things to say, and you have a very sharp and exciting way to do that. So, what do you have to say about that?
I don't know. My heart just sank when you said that because I feel like I feel a lot of things. Well, look, it's hard to generalize, and I've been working in
Yeah.
this medium for over a decade now, and a lot has happened. I should backtrack by saying I'm an American citizen, Canadian permanent resident. So I'm talking to you from
Okay.
Canada. We just had Thanksgiving yesterday.
Oh, wonderful.
My parents left the United States in 1970 for aesthetic, personal, and political reasons.
Okay.
They were not supportive of the war in Vietnam. So I've grown up in two countries and I have lived in each of the countries half of my life. And there's so much to say right now. Um, there is so much um, to feel and to follow. So over the last decade since I started this project, Trump has been elected president twice.
Absolutely.
I can, I'm not, those are my politics.
Yeah.
And I, have protested his presidency in a variety of ways. And it's not to say that I don't want to engage with his supporters. I would be happy to. All my projects have been public and open to anyone who wants to participate. Having said that, it's very self-selecting when you're protesting. Um, so I actually feel like I'm not doing a good job of expressing everything that I would like to express because the stage is so large. And when you're an activist, um, it's tempting to kind of spread yourself out and to log in about all sorts of things. And that's been very hard. Trump was very easy. Trump was easy, and I was not silent. And it was a traditional textile-based craftivist protest that was so exciting because it felt like there was something to channel directly.
Hmm.
Nuance
You
was,
felt
gone.
passionately.
Yes. Shocked more than surprised, just shocked on a daily basis.
Hmm.
And I look back
Hmm.
in the half years when I think I missed a single day of stitching a Trump quote. And then I was joined by thousands of people and the project's over
Yeah.
5,000 pieces.
Hmm.
And it was so big. So when you say I'm sort of touching on things that are happening, I look back somewhat nostalgically to the first Trump presidency. Um, I said to my husband yesterday, Trump could win the Nobel Peace Prize. And this is just,
Oh,
you know, I want a ceasefire. I want peace. I want,
yeah,
a two-state solution, all these things. But that Trump would actually pull this off is a very, we're in a much more
possible.
complicated period of time because you want something, but you don't want the way it's coming. And before we just didn't want something. And it was so every fiber of our being just felt how wrong it was. So all of that is to say is that you're very kind to say that I'm maybe touching on things. For me, I don't know that I am. It's
I
just
love
so
what
such a
you're doing in
nuanced,
that
complicated.
way. I think in today's time, I see the geopolitical situation across the world, and we all know it's not being the best. And I think the freedom of speech, specifically for creative people, a lot of time we run into, oh, look, um, artists are play two very dichotomy of the situation. Artists are always reminded, oh, this isn't your area of, oh, you shouldn't get into politics. Oh, this isn't about you. Oh, you stick to your lane. Versus if we really see, like, we've all seen, the creative people are one of the most, they have always been at the forefront, at any revolution, at any kind of, um, you know, any kind of practice of revolt or whatever politically. And I think it's also because, as creatives, it's not it's not an agenda. Often it is something that we deeply, passionately, like, there's no, like we make art, there's no other way. Like, it bothers you, and then you project that energy into something and, like, create something out of it. And I think in the last few years we've really seen it. I've seen it in India, US, in so many different parts of the world. We're seeing it, like, um, it becomes a way, a tool for all of us to say something. And as much as that's also true, another layer to it is, like, in today's time, it's not only in the US, but in so many different parts of the world now, that using that voice in whatever medium has become harder. It's become, under more scrutiny. Artists are also, uh, you know, I think the times have changed. And in times like today, to be political, not for an agenda, but because, you know, you have an opinion and you care. I think also it shows that we care, like we really care about something and we want to say something about it. But then I feel like artists are very creative. Like, I love how you've um, come. And I read one of your quotes and you were like, you're not, even though you're making the statement, you're really not making the statement. You're just repeating statements. But when you stitch them together, they are saying, like, we all can make our own interpretations to what, and they're also constant reminders, rereading, rewriting, of what is being said, what is being done. And it's going to go into the history. And we can't really undo them. It's going to be here for us. But tell me something, were you always like, is this your first creative political project? Like, you've gone into it, or have this been something that has always piqued your interest or bothered you?
Oh, well, I mean, as I was sort of, my childhood was political in a way, but of course that was my childhood, not a choice I made. No, I have not always been involved in political art or community-based art. This was sort of a perfect storm. I was working in textile and what I would call memory textiles before the Trump presidency. I was playing around with creating material records out of pre-existing fabrics. So part of my studio practice is I buy floss, but I don't I keep my projects um very simple so that anyone can participate. So there's no financial barrier to participating. Everyone has textiles, as it turns out,
Yeah.
kicking around or can find them easily. And so I was already playing around in that medium. I was very interested in how we felt when we saw something stitched into textile versus reading it on our phones or reading it in a book form or even seeing a photo. So how to create an object out of a tangible three-dimensional object out of text. and my
Mm.
background before art was creative writing and film. So I already was, interested in words and interested in visual ways of communicating and connecting. Everything just came together at a certain moment for me in 2018, 2019, and I can apply some sort of retroactive intentionality to Tiny Pricks project and say this is what I planned, but that's just not how it happened. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going
Yeah,
to,
and so
invite the world to stitch Trump quotes with me
yeah,
for 2.5 years, unless they're crazy like me. But it just sort of, it happened quickly. But the pieces all make sense to me. So what makes sense to
yeah,
me is I grew up in the wilderness, without electricity and indoor plumbing. So I'm very comfortable making things. I'm very comfortable with keeping things simple. Um, so that's sort of, that's, I think, part of why I work in this medium. I Social media was just really becoming, I think, a platform for artists. And so I, as a parent of four living in British Columbia, could reach people all over the world
yeah,
suddenly without an agent, without a gallery.
yeah,
So that happened. And then the Trump presidency happened. And I don't think that we can underestimate the value of a common motivator. Now we've lost that. You can't keep protesting at that level for over a
yeah.
decade, you can't. The second presidency is so different than the first.
Then the first.
Yes, because now you would be protesting, half of the country and who we are because everyone knew who he was when he was reelected. And the reason I keep circling back to the political situation in the US is that uh, my first reaction to the first presidency was to protest in this sort of very full-throated, very
Yeah,
literal way if you see these words and you see them again, as you said, in 10 years from now, surely you'll know what you're protesting. Now I focus a lot more on a different kind of protest, which is, I think, is making things quieter. And that's certainly just the
hmm.
period I'm in right now when the next election cycle comes around, and we'll see who's running, and
Who
I
knows
may
what
ramp
happened?
right back
Yeah,
up to where I was before. Who knows what will happen? Yeah. Who knows? I mean, if you look in the last decade, this project has gone through, two Trump presidencies, uh, uh, things changing for,
yeah.
I mean, I just can't
And
even,
who knew there was a
for women,
second?
for minorities. Who knew that,
Who
like,
knew?
all this could actually happen? And here we are, a
Yeah,
pandemic, all the different things that have happened in the last decade.
yeah,
But I wanna say that w I switched after he was out of office to a different kind of language almost entirely that I considered also a protest, which is that I looked to other artists, writers. I looked to the people who and to nature and to music and to poets, and I just had to re-nourish myself, and I figured if I was looking for that after 2.5 years of everyday stitching,
yeah,
language coming out of that administration, surely other people would be too, because you can't keep yourself on high alert indefinitely, because if you're on high alert indefinitely, then it's no longer a high alert. It's a permanent state of being, and so I had to go back and return to the things that made me feel inspired and feel better. And so but I consider that equally political. I consider that if you look at my page today, it's going to be a couple pieces about Diane Keaton. It's going to be, there's not going to be so many Trump quotes, but every single post to me is
people
about
who,
what is politically.
yeah,
And
in
if
the
you
world,
feel,
yeah,
yes. And like you, I'm sorry for the loss of your mother. Like you, I lost a parent, and that also shifted everything, how I
yeah,
saw every for a long time, through this heavy filter of grief, which turns out, protesting the Trump presidency is a kind of form of grief because
yeah,
we're definitely protesting some of the things that we thought we could take for granted that we wouldn't lose.
yeah.
And
Now we
once you're
don't.
no, we
Yeah,
don't.
yeah.
Now it's
And it's,
all
I
it's
don't think
all
it's, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say now it's all unstable, and it is all up for grabs, I think, in some ways.
I think, it's not only with what's happening in the US, but I think globally, if you look at it, and I think even since COVID, um, even like on the world level, there's so much that has happened and happened right in front of our eyes. Um, and no one thing particularly, I feel like, um, is like everything is connected. Like, what we see, how, the Gaza war, what's happening with Russia, what's also happened here in India with US, like the whole situation. Um, and I really like, while you also had Jane's quotes also embroidered, and Diane, like, because it also shows, uh, while we're talking about politics, it's also just not about politics. Like I said, when I was looking at your work, so I could, like you said, I could see the transition haywired. While I was low below, there was a lot of Trump. But while I was the more recent, I saw Jean Carroll, I saw Tian, and then of course, there was Trump. But then it was also um, like a constant yin and yang, like both things.
Mhm,
There was, while we
mhm,
were also looking at things that we were maybe not um, incoherent with, but there were also things that brought more light in the world. Sometimes, like you said, you need the light more than anything else. While, if you've taken a lot of soda in your body, you would need to detox, or like, when you indigest something that's troubling you, you want to take something that settles it down. And even with the world situation, like, we can look at so many things that are going wrong, but then to move forward, we also have to continually find people that give us hope, find people who, show us there could be a future that we look forward to. And I think it also gives us courage. And I feel like I could see that in your recent mixture, where it was more of a mixture of different kind of voices. I think as an artist, when I look at it, it also shows uh, what you respond to and what I respond to. Like, you're the one who's picking those quotes, and I'm the one who's viewing those quotes. So it's also,
mhm,
what
mhm.
kind of people are you responding to? Some can be in agony and some can be in admiration. And when I'm, as a viewer, looking at those, you're also, it's an activism, because we are being connected on either agony or admiration for somebody.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I agree with all of that, and um, I think I am I have a pretty direct relationship with what is happening, so I'm either sort of ignoring it or I'm stitching it, and it's sort of
Okay.
it's a curating all the time, but the absence of something on my feed can very upsetting to people if I don't stitch about something, and people
Oh,
message me and ask me to stitch things,
wow.
all the time because A, they're helping me, and that's always been true, because sometimes you can't track everything, and because
Yeah.
people have followed my work long enough that they know what kind of thing I'm going to stitch, and so they wait to see if I'm going to stitch it.
But that's
Um,
also true. They send you. I read that, where people would also stitch themselves and send you.
yes, so there are different ways people interact with my work. One is, uh, they follow it, they share it, they send me textiles. People send me, I call blank textiles, which is extremely helpful because I don't have to go out and buy,
And buy
beautiful
things.
hankies. Yeah, and it's so fun, and they're so happy because, they don't know what to do with them otherwise, and what better way to get rid of something to really sort of upcycle it so that it appears, as artwork on a feed, and then somebody somewhere buys the piece, and this textile has a whole new life of its own.
Life.
And then people do, stitch pieces and contribute them to the project. So I used to post every piece that was contributed, and now I people can still send me pieces. I post them more in sort of clumps because the feed is different daily, or
For you,
I'm
yeah.
curating it. Yeah. But it's all to say that there's sort of lots of different relationships, and then there are people, I'm sorry, who don't, like what I do or don't or object
Yeah.
to a and I
Because they're not
always
looking at art, because then this is also separated. Like, it's not separated. Like, somebody's looking at it, it's just not art now, it's politics also. And in a, like, we know the situation. Like, I'm also thinking, were you also afraid? Sometimes, are you afraid to putting things out there? Does sometimes, when there are supporters, there's also hate. Do you also deal with that?
afraid of I'm more afraid of hurting someone or of being ignorant or too reactive than I am of getting sort of hate. I'm more concerned about causing people pain of not being aware of all the nuances. I have posted quotes by people and then had people contact me and say, that writer just said this or did that, or I really think you should know. And I don't object. And I don't know about hate necessarily, so much as I think the hardest messages I've gotten are from people who've been disappointed in me. And
Hmm.
especially after Hamas's terrorist attack on October 7th, and then the just devastating destruction of Gaza. And there are a lot of people who are like, I followed you for years, and now you've said that, basically, I don't know how you could say what you've just said and how I could support you. And honestly, sometimes it was it was one quote, and both sides either messaged me and said, "Thank you for supporting us," or said, "I'm unfollowing you because, what you said is totally, ignorant." And so all I'm concerned about is being responsible for the platform. And what I also really object to, and I will block people if they do this, is people attacking each other in the
Each
comments.
other.
I
Yeah.
do feel like I have some responsibility for the forum. I can't spend all day reacting to comments, but if you're just on there to make someone
Put someone
feel
down.
bad,
Yeah.
yes, then I block people. And that took me a little while to get to that point where I felt like I had the right to do that, but someone sort of described it to me as, your account is like a restaurant. It's your restaurant. So if somebody's
Yeah.
bothering your customer, you ask them to leave. You figure out, you have to bear some responsibility. If you choose to be in this arena, it's open. It's open to the public, and the public has, people have a lot of feelings. I'm more concerned about feelings than I am about,
Telling.
yeah, being at
What
the
are your
receiving end of
feelings
hate.
while what are your feelings
I
while you're
feel
stitching these? I mean, the act of stitching in itself is a slow, steady process. It's something,
Mhm.
um, like, I don't know how you stitch, but do you have something else going in the background or something, and you're multitasking, or you sit as you sit with it, and like, how are you feeling? Because it's also not something like, you're not, like, as an artist, when we're also painting something, we're continually absorbing it. So you're also talking about something which is very much real. It's not in your mind. It's not like, it's a statement. It means something. It, in real life, it could have, or it may already have had an impact. So what's your creative process of looking at it?
So, um, I stitch as much as I can, because I can't wait to post pieces, and because there's so much happening all the time. And I often listen to podcasts. So I listened to your last one with Emily, which I thought was really
Ah,
interesting. I multitask that way. I listen to the variety of political podcasts I listen to. Like to sit outside and be in the sunlight or be in nature. I like to use it as time to think, but you're right. I'm not playing with my imagination so much as once I know what I'm going to say, I just can't wait to stitch it and share it,
stitch and
because
share.
usually, I know that right now when I do these pieces that come from things I love, I can't wait to sort of share this thing that I love. And
Love or hate, both, isn't it? It could be
beg your pardon?
either. I'm saying it could be love or
Yeah.
hate, both.
Yes. Yes. The hate is sort of like the protest is just like
Yeah.
it's like thrusting out. You can get it out and then
Yeah.
we move on. That's that I
Yeah.
in that time it takes to stitch it, I've expended the
Yeah.
energy. So
You
my
know,
work is much
yeah.
more like a it's like taking like I have been doing a series of going to the gym in the morning for classes at my gym that's having a challenge. And I can't imagine my morning without it. I love it
Without
so
it.
much. And the same is true of stitching. It's just how I process things, and it's pretty fast. I basically speed stitch unless I'm doing a commission and it's a special piece. There are other kinds of pieces that I do. They're different. But what I'm talking about really now is the content for Instagram that is time is one of the factors in my work. Is how quickly
Really,
did you
how
hear it?
contextually, yeah, and how it can come in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And also then, how far back am I going in the file drawer to pull out some quote or memory? And I think it's no mistake that a lot of the pieces that I do now are when someone has died, and it's
Yeah.
become a kind of mourning process. And I can see that too, because and it's not just me. If you go on your feed before you've heard the news of a public
You
figure
see people's
dying,
clip.
yeah, you're gonna see, and that's not always been true. That has not been true. That is a socialized behavior, and that we have come to use social media for our collective grieving.
Yeah. But you know what? Maybe
Yes,
in today's time, it's just not grieving. It's also, it starts from caring. And I think in a world like today, social media is really confusing. It's a lot of noise, and it's also a lot of algorithm, and people, it becomes a trend if somebody goes and suddenly, you wouldn't see that person as much. But the moment somebody's gone, they become content and everything they've been. One, a lot of people who are consuming probably care because that's the reason they're looking at it. But a lot of time, there's view farming, then, like, it's very twisted where we live now in the times that we are, because it's also like, even if we talk about politics, and I was reading this article where what's happening in Gaza, um, it's also led to um, an, a different way. Like, there's a whole army of the Gaza content creators who are creating the before and after, or the after, or how they are living in the wartime. Like, it's to think of it. Like, I'm just thinking myself as I like hearing myself as I'm saying this, because, like, we're living in a time where people are going through so much pain, and then they are using that also as a way to communicate with others and showing them. And um, all of us who's sitting all parts of the world, we're looking at it, but there's also very little difference that we're making, honestly. So, like, how, like, it's become much more, um so much more than what, just as, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but I feel like it's, with social media, things get, there's so many different angles to it. Like, there's so much going on that we often get confused ourselves and try to say something.
yeah. Well, that is definitely a really important to think about. I I think that I've stepped out of certain spaces, and well, first of all, there's certain, like, I had to find my own comfort level with reposting other people's content, because that's another area of social media that is very tricky, which is that
Yeah,
things get passed on and the original source is lost. And so
yeah,
where does something come from? And
yeah,
I thought I was pretty obvious about what my work was, but I did talk to someone who said, I thought for years that all your pieces were, created digitally. And I was
Really?
just so surprised. Yes, but, the thing is that you really have to resist the temptation to talk about things that you don't know about, like, to resist talking about things you don't know about, and to say you don't know, and to say
No,
that you're
no.
in a space, and to, leave space for the people who do know, who I don't know how I don't think everyone has to log in on everything. I just don't think
Absolutely.
that's the healthiest for us to behave, and I don't think we're listening that well when we do that. I understand it feels very performative, and I understand that there's a lot of pressure to you know generate content, and
Content.
um but if it becomes about my identity, my ego, what people expect of me, then I think I get a little bit lost. I
Yeah,
think
I
that's
have a
probably
question here.
not.
I have a
Yeah.
question
Okay, go
here.
ahead.
Like,
Yeah.
like even in while does it impact you? Like any other picture? Like, we know if let's say I'm posting a picture of me, I know I will get this much reach. But if I'm posting a picture of my painting, it may not necessarily like this. Or if it's a painting and me, then I know what is going to happen. Like, we've all been on social media so far that we know. Now it impacts our thinking process. It impacts how we're responding to things. Now you're also responding in a way as an artist, choosing the kind of content you want to respond to. Does the role of social media, and let's say uh, if you've picked up a quote, like what kind of does it impact your choice? Is what I'm trying to ask. Like, are you sometimes do you catch yourself thinking, oh, this might be too controversial, or this may feel too easy, or like, you're as an artist, because with social media the feedback is so instant and so fast and quick that and it can sometimes it can also impact the decisions of, is it something that I am as an artist responding, or because of how quickly the feedback comes in and I am in a loop with with my audience? Is it that the baggage of that impacts you? So I'm just trying to understand, how does that play in your work?
Well, I often think about what my first instinct is, because like other creative people or other people, I have a feeling about something immediately. So I think of something, and I'm thinking about it as I'm walking, or I'm in my exercise class, and I think, what is the piece that I'm going to like, what do I feel when I hear this news? What do I think?
Yeah,
And then I think about the piece, and that comes to me very quickly. And then I think about posting it, and my husband and children seeing it. And they are my most trustworthy built-in audience, because they don't hesitate to tell me what they think.
yeah,
But it's always coming from a place of love. So if
yeah,
I'm gonna post something, I think about, honestly, those are 5 other people. I have 4 kids. What they're gonna say about it, because they're adults.
yeah.
They're not kids anymore. They're 13 to 21. And so they are living in the world in a very exciting way. They have interests. They're living in different places. They're telling me what they think about things. And social media is a space that we are all in, and they
Oh,
know
sure,
well.
yeah,
So it's not like, "Oh, did you read that book?" "No, I didn't read that book." They know a lot of the stuff that I'm posting about. So, my first sort of criteria is, after I have an impulse, is it something I feel comfortable talking to my family about? Because if I
yeah.
can talk to them, if I can explain
Then
it
you
to
can,
them, or defend it, and why yesterday did I just stitch a piece that said peace? Like, why
yeah.
didn't what did I mean by that? If I can tell in my head, respond to that conversation with them, then I
Hmm.
feel like the rest I can sort of handle. And I just think that's why I think we have creative communities. I can't speak for all of Instagram, all my
Yeah,
followers and all of Instagram.
yeah,
So that's sort of what I use, but I wanna say, like, I feel like I often fall short of my own expectations of myself and what I think, I really wanna say, but I've also learned to say, and probably this for my kids, to say less and leave space for other people.
Yeah,
You know, peace can mean many different things. To me, it sounds like a kind of, idealistic, nostalgic word, like one
yeah.
what could that possibly
Exhaustion
look
to
like?
me, it can mean,
But
yeah, I mean, when I hear it, I feel like exhaustion sometimes, like we're so, sometimes I feel like when I feel what's happening in the world and I feel like peace, like for God's sake, we all have some peace because I feel like
yeah,
since COVID, like not only in my own personal life, but I feel like in the world, it feels like it's on fire.
yeah. I think if I take something really big that's happening and I can make it really small, like in one piece, like one literally one 5 by 5 handkerchief, one small object that is not, is a humble object, that's great. And if I can take something that's really small and make it much bigger
Much
because it
bigger,
gets reshared and it goes viral and is amplified, I'm interested in that tension between like big and small and
small.
how we see things and what we take from it. But you've said before, and when we started talking, a lot of it is how other people are going to react to this. I don't know, and I post, and then I do what I call sort of babysitting for a post. I'll babysit for it for about 20 minutes, which means I check it to make sure
It's
it
fine.
hasn't, yeah, that it hasn't attracted some bot or it hasn't,
Yeah,
mean, there's things I've learned not to do, like, I don't use the hashtag NRA because I don't want a bunch of pro-gun lobbyists, like, I don't know, there's
yeah,
things you learn, but you don't know quite because you are releasing something very quickly, and it has the
yeah.
ability to very quickly, so I babysit for it
Hmm.
for about 20 minutes, and then I don't look at it for quite a while,
Yeah,
and then hours later, I'll go back and check, and if there are a lot of comments, I try to respond to those. Like, for example, I did a Molly Jong Fast quote that she wrote about a book about how to lose your mother, about her mother's dementia. And she wrote in her book, you can't pre grieve a parent. And I
yeah.
just thought that such a interesting quote. So I stitched this quote and I attributed it to her. And it got a lot of traction because and I didn't think it would, but I thought it was more of a quiet meditative quote that just makes you sort of sit back and think, like, can you actually pre-grieve the loss of a parent or can you not? But people had very strong opinions. They were like, my parent has dementia and I am grieving right now. Two other people were like, I've lost a parent. And I absolutely agree because the world now is so different that what I thought I was doing before was
Beautiful.
pre grief, but not
Yeah, big absolute.
the absolute, right? And so
Yeah.
so that I feel like that's an example of a quote where the engagement I felt I needed to say something when people, I felt compelled to respond. And that's the engagement piece that um is like it's like the you step off the platform and you go into the audience sort of like you don't
It's
know, but
also, I
but it's
think,
much.
is it also because I think it's also very universal, mutually shared emotion. I think we've we all have um, experienced or have to fear or whatever. I don't even want to put it in a box. Like I think we all have very very different experiences. But it's also
Mhm.
still grieving is something. Any kind of grief. I feel like I've experienced loss of a mother, but I've also experienced loss of my dogs and animals that I dearly love. And I think that's been a grieving process. And, I've seen people who've also lost family, but also like, lost in a very different way and they've grieved. Well, like this is something we all universally experience in a grieving process. I think we all are afraid of losing people that we love. Um, Aging parents and people you love, looking at them is never easy. And I think universally, we are all afraid. I think after COVID, We're all very afraid. We don't take it for granted. Like, I think the person I was before COVID, I never thought, never in this world, that I would lose a mother. My mom wouldn't be here, or that was, you think that this wouldn't never happen to you or your family or your parents until it does. And like you now, um, once you've seen this, I don't take life, death as for granted as I used to before COVID, because now I know how fragile that is. And um, it's, we think it's not like we have it, we take it for granted. But I think after COVID and everything that's been happening in the world now, um, it's given us a reminder in these 5 years that it's not like it's here today and it may not be here tomorrow. Like it's true for all of us.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of anticipatory um anxiety, anticipatory fear, and pre-grieving, I think, too. And then you're right,
Yeah,
there's a line you cross and you're in the other world. You're in another world. And I think that you're right that the reason that quote, I think, generated so much engagement is that it is something that's different for everyone. So everyone had an
yeah,
interpretation of that concept.
yeah,
And when agree, there's less engagement to some degree because we all agree. So there we go. And I think the reason that quote and that concept, because it has touched everyone now. I mean, because we've had these yeah, this common event. Now we
yeah,
experienced the event differently and it impacted people differently, but it was something I think we all, I mean, I guess there are people who think it doesn't exist, but that was
yeah,
a something that changed all of us.
yeah,
And we already sort of the things are moving so quickly that this medium of sort of stitching, when I go back and look at the pieces that were created during the pandemic, boy, does it seem like a long time ago even. So
yeah,
it is, and the concept is of it is so immediate, but the language coming out of it was so specific and um I traveled recently and there were people coughing in my flight, so I put on a mask and I thought even that smell of the mask and the feel of the mask was something that I had forgotten. But then
yeah.
once
We have.
I put it on, it came back immediately, that kind of
Yeah,
feeling, light breathe, that
yeah,
feeling of closing off, of of
yeah.
of hiding half of your face, and all of that came back to me immediately. And maybe that's sort of what this textile medium, the stitching medium, because there is language, and as you said earlier, so wisely, it is not an imaginative process that I'm going through. I'm not making something up. It's all
But
around
it's also,
us.
I think it's both things. I think we all have our ways. When I think of what you're doing, I can also think of it like, when you have a conversation with someone, let's say a WhatsApp chat, and that
Mhm,
somebody said something to you, and it could
mhm,
either be something that you really like, someone you love, and let's say somebody said, I don't know, I mean, a lot of times I go over my mom's chat, and when I'm missing her, I just want to be reminded. I just go over, uh, look at our conversation, our last conversations, and I'm obsessively again and again and again and again just thinking about it. And when I'm also thinking about it and looking at it, I'm just not looking at the words. I'm looking at moments I've spent with her, the regrets I have, um, things I've missed, conversations I wanted to have, or conversation I'm willing to have. Or like, even though it's just I'm looking at something that you're saying, I'm reading, but then in my mind, there's a whole different scenario of imagination and possibilities of what I've missed, what I wanted, or what I'm feeling like. It may not be like, when I look at your work, I think I look it at like that, like, a message that somebody sent, and sometimes somebody's hurt you, and you reread it, and you feel like, oh my God, does it only sound, is it my mind? Am I making it sound that bad, or is it really bad? How did somebody say that to me? Or how did I
mhm.
respond to it? And while we're reading it, it's just not what we're reading. It's also the things that are going in my mind. Oh, how do I respond to it? Or I did this with this person, and then even then, like that's how I look at your work while you're talking.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, and I think that's how I sort of look at it too. I mean, it's kind of a funny thing, but I have in my studio stacks and stacks of handkerchiefs, and I can, flip through them and not know what to do with them.
Tourism.
While I'm flipping through them, some part of me is just recording them, and then I'll hear a quote, and I will be somewhere else driving in the car, and I
Yeah,
know what textile to use. And as soon as I know what textile to use, and this is a metaphor for our lives, right? But
yeah,
as soon as I know what textile to use, the rest is just craft. It's just sit down, do it, and post, prep and
yeah,
photograph and post it. And that is sort of the flow, and so
yeah,
I think a lot about, you want in your life to have somewhere this stack of,
yeah,
tools and skills and experiences or whatever it is, so that you can marry this new thing that's happening and you can put these things together and
yeah,
create this thing that just and it teaches you patience. You're waiting, you don't know what
yeah,
is going to happen with particular textile, just like you don't
yeah,
know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so you have to trust this process. And when you know, and that is the
yeah,
most
when,
satisfying,
yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and we all have this in different ways,
yeah,
and you're
yeah,
right. You can relook, revisit, and every time you revisit it, you see the quote differently because you're in a
yeah,
different place. And yet there's something tangible there, just like your WhatsApp conversations with your mother. That's the reading. The reading
yeah,
is, a creative process. It's not static.
yeah. I love that. It's also like you're also documenting the time that you're in, but like any other artist, very vocally, you're also documenting who you are. Like if, your grandchildren tomorrow or, people who admire your work or some, when they will look at your work, those stack and stack today, one at a time may not mean anything. But tomorrow, they may add a lot more context to the world lived in, not we live in, but also who you were and
Mhm.
what you stood for and what you believed in. It's like, it's if you we look at it like as artists, we play such a small and such a big role. It's such a personal thing because it talks about you. Every word that you stitch also is a part of yourself you stitch into those words. But then also, when combined together, when you're responding to a real life event, we're all, it's also stitch by stitch, you're also etching the current in a history. Like, when somebody's going to study the time that we lived in, uh, everything come together is going to set so much for them.
It is definitely daily practice. So therefore, you're literally connected to the passage of time and to habit. Um, I mean, you're making me wonder, and maybe after this call, I'll ask my kids. I'm not sure if now I'm wondering, like, do they actually follow it every day anymore? Or is it just like that thing that mom does? But I do think about the fact that it will hopefully now this is a whole nother topic, but all of our social media content can disappear tomorrow and there's nothing we can do about it.
Absolutely.
Um, we don't you don't own your account and you don't, we think about it something like the books I have in the bookshelf here in my studio, that I own those books, and it's not true. Somebody could just pull those books off the shelf and
Well,
they disappear. So I don't know what will be around forever, but I am definitely leaving something behind. I'm leaving a trail, and that's and I don't think I'm leaving it for myself. I don't imagine that
yeah.
I will. I mean, it's over 7,000 posts, so that's
Lot of work.
I mean, and we haven't even touched on the physical collection, which is, to say that my work is my account, but it is also a physical collection. It is
Yeah.
totally different experience to see
Yeah.
the actual object, not reduced to a
Yeah.
tiny,
A
box, but
feed.
yeah. Yeah, that
Yeah.
it's sort of so having shows, in person is also important because it is much closer to the body.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then it also sets a, when people send you, it's also it's inclusivity from all parts of the world. It reflects about every clothes, every piece of a cloth tells a story, where it came
Mhm.
from, the kind of weather it's been, how worn out and how comfortable it's been. So like if you pull things together, there's, like, as artists, as people who, if you go deeper, there's so much more to it than, just textile and coats. And I think it becomes such a bigger perspective. And it's like you said, it's like it's kind of a movement that so many people get to be a part of and hopefully bring a change.
Hopefully, I think it's a bit like the peace, peace is like
Yeah.
change, sure.
Change.
Yeah. I mean, process,
Yeah.
this staying
Yeah.
present process. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much, Diana. It was really nice speaking to you. We
My
thought
pleasure.
we'll keep it under 30, but we're already close to an hour, so I won't
Yeah.
keep you back for too long. Where can people find you and support you if you want to know more about the project and support you and, have this conversation further?
Well, I have a book out that came out a year ago called Crafting a Better World, and it's a collection of creative interventions and examples of creative solutions to people's for issues from their personal lives to climate change, climate crisis. But what it really is like a bunch of my favorite people that I got to put in a book, which is so gratifying and so exciting. So that's Crafting a Better World, and then everything I post is on Instagram, Tiny Pricks Project. I mean, I have a website, I'm on other platforms, but that's really where I keep it pretty
Yeah,
simple because it's
most.
just worked well for me.
Yeah,
So, yep.
perfect. So we'll make sure if you want to learn more about Diana's work, you can go follow Diana on the mentioned Instagram. The link is in this article. It's also in the description uh, for this episode. So thank you so much, everybody who tuned in, and thank you, Diana. I will see you soon.
Because so nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Same here. Thank you.
Take care.